All right, this is the Rossville County Utility Independent District meeting of 10/23/19. We appreciate you all being here. Thank you for your attendance. Let the record show that Mr. Bernardi is not here today.
Can you speak up, please?
How about that? Let the record indicate that Mr. Bernardi is not here, and Matt is not here, so we still do have a forum, and we will continue. If you wouldn't mind, please join me in a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to officially welcome you all here today. Anyway, we would like to officially welcome you all here today and say thank you for your attendance. And we will move now to item number 2, which is the presentation.
Good morning, and thank you all for attending the NSCUD meeting, your Sumter County Utility Independent District meeting on solid waste planning. My name is Richard Baer, I'm the district manager, and in previous meetings, both the work group settings and real-time information feedback has been utilized in creating the following scenarios that we'll go through for alternatives for solid waste management. All the information for this meeting and previous meetings are on our districtgov.org website. These meetings have been widely covered with print media online and on the website as part of the board meetings themselves, as well as to be transparent to make sure that those members of our community who wish to be a part of these discussions have the opportunity to do so. Within the villages, the solid waste management efforts is big business. If you've attended number district board meetings or the NSCUD meetings themselves, you've heard me go over some of the statistics, and it's about a $10 million all-in effort. That's big business. We're talking about tons and tons of recyclables, as well as green materials and solid waste products that heretofore need to be planned out for years to come. The next meeting, which is on November 4th, so that will be in just a little over a week, that will focus on the board's discussion of the final alternatives and how we'll move forward with the solid waste planning. That meeting will be at Lake Sumter Landing. That's at the district administration offices, right there above the Starbucks and the other first floor retail, and we'll be in the district boardroom, and that meeting will start at 9 a.m. So with this, I'd like to turn it over to Jacobs Engineering. We have here John Wood and Dan Hitzler, both of whom have contributed greatly to this presentation. What I would ask is that you actually hold your questions until the end. We're going to go through the presentation, and likely when you have a question, there'll be something that will come up that we will address in a further slide. If not, then please address that at the end of the meeting. The board members now are invited to go up into the first row so that they too can get a look at the presentation, and we can go through the presentation in detail. John?
Thank you. A couple things before we get started. First of all, it's October. I know you don't know that in Florida, but up north, we've had a freeze. I had a pull my committee plans out, so the weather's changing. But it is nice to be back down here, even though it was 94 degrees, I think, when I got off the plane yesterday. So it's nice to be back and be working on this job. Joining me today is Dan Hitzler and also Rock Rayford. Rock heads up our operations program here in the villages. So what we're going to do today is work through a quick previous meetings, discuss what options are available for recycling, discuss what options are available for disposal, and then do a wrap-up and let's talk about the meeting in November that Richard highlighted. So the purpose of today's meeting, the district is in the process of preparing a solid waste master plan. The plan is being developed with input from the residents, and what we want to do today is we want to update the community of the progress we've made and what the options are available. We will have several opportunities during the presentation to stop and talk about the options. We'll talk about recycling first, then we'll talk about public input at that point. And same thing with disposal options. So the district's preparing a plan. As a contractor, we're helping them with this plan. And what it's going to do is it's going to identify the amount of waste generated, the amount of recyclables generated, what the current program is, and what the options are to move forward. It's also going to look at the budgets, not just the current budget, but also projections for the next 5 years. What impact does this have on the household assessment? As well as provide a recommendation on the path forward. So, previous meetings, who attended one or both of the previous meetings? Okay, fair enough. Thank you. We'll run through this just in a couple minutes, just make sure everyone understands what we've done through the previous meetings. So in June, we reviewed the program. We reviewed what the district does for waste collection, recyclables, where the material goes. We talked about some of the trends that are happening right now, not just here in the villages of Florida, but what's happening globally. And really that's been impacted by the ability to sell recyclable materials. China and other Asian countries have developed policies that severely limit our ability to sell recyclables. As a result, the price and just the simple ability to sell those materials has decreased significantly. In 2018, there was about 40,000 tons of solid waste generated within the villages. 22,000 tons was solid waste. So that's the garbage that's put out twice a week. Recyclables is about 11,000 tons, and brush is about 6,800 tons. We currently use 11 trucks, rear loading trucks. That's a rear loading truck. That's what's used to pick up the solid waste and the recyclables. For the commercial waste, we use front loading trucks. There's 2 trucks, and then we have 1 truck that services the pickup for bulk waste. So where does the solid waste go? It's set out at the curb, either in black bags or white bags for solid waste, the clear bags for recyclables, and then yard waste is usually bundled. We have 3 different trucks that make these collections. So the solid waste is picked up twice a week from each household. We collect 4 days a week. So we do half the villages on Monday, the other half on Tuesday, and then we come back again on Thursday and Friday. Recyclables are collected once per week, and then yard waste is collected on Wednesdays. All the material is taken to a privately owned transfer station, where the solid waste goes to the landfill. The recyclable material gets shipped to a MRF, or Materials Recovery Facility, where it's processed and then sold. And then the yard waste is shipped to a waste energy plant, or an energy from waste plant, where it's burned. One of the things that happens here in Florida is how we measure recyclables. So in Florida, the material that is burned is allowed to be calculated and included in the recycling rate. Now, we don't get full credit for that. We get about 50% credit. It's based on the BTU content of the material and the amount of electricity generated. So nationally, recycling rate's about 34%. In Florida, it's about 54%. Part of the reason is there's 12 waste energy plants, so that has increased that recycling rate. And then for the villages in 2018, the recycling rate was about 37%. So that's what we covered at the first meeting. At the second meeting, the idea was to provide additional information about the program here in the villages. What we did is we handed out clippers, voters, and we asked a series of questions. I think we had 92 questions, or I'm sorry, we had 48 questions, and solicited input from the residents. And we did that because we wanted everybody to have a vote, we wanted everybody to have a voice, and I know sometimes people don't want to stand up in public and talk. So this gave us an opportunity to collect that information. And we asked a series of questions and collected information, and I'll go through some of those responses that we received. We also held 4 breakout sessions at that meeting, so we could have one-on-one conversations and talk about recycling and education and disposal. So I picked about a half dozen of the major topics from the survey. The first question, one of the first questions was, are you satisfied with the current solid waste? So this is the garbage collection. And it was an overwhelmingly supportive of the current program. So the strongly agree and agree responses, they were together, neutral, and disagree or strongly disagree. It's about 90% of people either strongly agree or agree that they're satisfied with the current solid waste program. We asked the same question about recycling, and it dropped. It dropped about 75%. So why? I think the answer was the following question. Do you know what goes in the recycling bag? And it was basically a 50-50 response. So that highlighted something to us. We do have our informational brochure. I know we handed it out last time. We have more over here on the table. But that sort of got us thinking, well, gee, if half the people aren't sure what's going on with recycling, maybe we need to look at education and do something different. So this was one of the major reasons why people weren't satisfied with the recycling. They weren't sure what they should be putting in their material. What material they should be putting in their recycling bag. We talked a little bit about cost. Would residents be willing to pay slightly more, less than $2 a month, to maintain the current program? Like I said, because of the difficulties in recycling material, that cost to recycle has gone up significantly. And we had strong support, about 75% agreed or strongly agreed that they would pay up to 2% more per month to continue the current program. Bulky waste. Last year we made about 10,000 pickups of bulky waste. And that's, for a community that size, that's a high percentage of pickups. So we looked at how often do people use it. Again, the majority of people, close to 90%, never use it or only use it once per year. So I think what's happening is we've got some people that use it multiple times. One of the things that we've done recently, because this is a call-in system, when you call in, we're now asking, what is the material? Because what we're finding is there's some stuff that can be put out with the regular trash. It doesn't quite fit in the bag, or a curtain rod. Well, how do you get that in a bag? But we can collect it. So we've been doing some education on that side. So when you call in to schedule bulky waste, we'll ask what material it is, and that helps us understand we need to send out a special pickup, or can you just put it next to the bag, on top of the bag, and we'll take care of it during the regular pickup process. We asked a question about charging for bulky waste. Mixed feelings on this one. We're going to talk about this again later today. It's typical that residents are charged $5 to $20 per pickup. Some municipalities charge a flat fee, others charge based on the size of the material. I know where I live, I have a red tag. I go to the township, purchase the red tag, I put it on the bulky waste, and that covers the pickup. So we talked about whether or not there should be an additional fee, say anywhere from $5 to $20 for bulky waste pickup. About 50% of the people felt there should be, but about 25% disagreed or strongly disagreed that it should not be a separate fee and should just continue as part of the program. I think this may be something that evolves. Let's see how many pickups we have this year, maybe through the education and helping understand what is truly bulky waste and what can we do in the regular system. maybe that will affect how we set up this program. We talked about yard waste, try to understand how frequently people put out yard waste. Some people, small percentage, put it out almost every week, monthly. It seems the major, about 50% of the people put it out maybe once a month. So it seems to be well used, but not every week. Then there's a small percentage, about 25% of the people rarely use it or never use it. So that's a summary of some of the major points that we heard at the last meeting. One of the other things we talked about at the last meeting was the bond fund. In 2012, the district issued bonds for the purchase of Sumter Sanitation and has been paying off those bonds through the household assessment. Last year, what happened is there wasn't enough capital, there wasn't enough money in the fund to, there's something called a debt service coverage or debt service coverage fee. So the district has to maintain so much excess money in that fund just to show that they can pay the fund. So it's an excess fund that they have to maintain. There wasn't enough money to maintain that excess fund, so they went through and adjusted the rates, adjusted the monthly fee to make sure they maintain that balance in the fund, and that increased the monthly rate from $17.90 per household to $19.38 per household. So that happened 2 months ago, and that was to continue to cover the reserve fund that needs to be established. We also touched on the monthly cost, and how much is actually, what does it cost the program? What does it cost for the program, and how much revenue is raised through the household assessment? So it's currently costing about $19 to $20 per month, but the household assessment has been $18 to $19. So we've been running about $1 per month short on the assessment. The other thing we also looked at was how do the fees here in the villages compare to other communities? And if you look at other communities here in Central Florida, $20 a month is about average for once a week or twice a week collection. So these fees are typical of what we're seeing throughout the state, throughout Central Florida. I do think there is a high level of service here in the villages. We do have the twice a week collection. We use the bag system, et cetera. So it's comparable or slightly more favorable than what we're seeing in other communities. But overall, there has been a shortfall in that the fee charged, the household assessment, doesn't cover all the cost. So that's what we covered in the first 2 meetings. We took that information and we started to develop goals. So where do we want to go? What do we want solid waste here in the villages to look like? And came up with 3 general goals. And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about these at this point. We'll take a break. So what we took away was we want to maintain a high level of satisfaction, a high level of service for collection of solid waste, recycling, yard trash, and bulky waste. We don't want to go bare bones. We don't want to cheapen the program down. We want to maintain what we have and provide high quality service. We need an education program. We need to expand what we're doing to make sure residents are aware of the program and understand their actions, how their actions impact the cost. And lastly, continue to provide recycling and disposal services, but add flexibility. We may find that we want to remove some materials. We may find we want to add some materials to recycling. I'll show you some cost numbers on the actual recycling program, but it's costing us money, meaning it costs more to process the material than it does to sell it for items like glass, paper, mixed plastics. So these were the 3 goals that we heard. So at this point, we'd like to sort of take a break and let's talk about these goals and see what kind of feedback. Is this what we heard? Is this correct? Or what other things should we be thinking about as we move forward? We can use this mic, I guess. So I guess the first question would be
Jim Cipollone, live in Village of Palo Alto. A couple of questions I ask you. First thing is, all these remedies just restrict the consumers. Have you guys done any preliminary work with the manufacturers that manufacture these goods, like Pepsi, Coke, or any of these guys for different programs? I know I read up on some information that in California they have a ship that processes 50 tons of ocean plastic a day, and it converts to low sulfur diesel fuel. And I did the calculation at $2 a gallon, it's about 0.75, 0.8 to 1. So there is some energy savings or energy recovery from that. Also, in Europe, the plastic bottle recycling is there's 30% preforms are made from recycled plastic, and there's also equipment that out there that recycles plastic that they can use with any kind of plastic, peanut butter jars, dirty plastic, wash it, and they can recycle them. And are you guys doing anything in reference to the manufacturers?
What we're seeing right now is manufacturers are changing how they recycle plastics. Previously, it's been a mechanical process. We take the plastics, we shred it, and then you try to make something from the shredded plastic. So you take your milk jugs, you shred it, and you make park benches. That's a low-value product. Where the industry is going is a terminology called chemical recycling. So what you do is you take the plastic and you process it chemically, and you break it down into the original feedstock, which is what you had mentioned. So they're taking it back to the raw materials, so instead of just having shredded milk jugs, you now have polyethylene, or even earlier back in the chemical process. So that's where the industry is going. How that affects the villages, it's difficult. The villages doesn't have enough waste.
Well, and then let me just say, John, the other major issue is that as a Florida Statute 190, more like a local government, we don't have the authority, the legislative authority to control what the businesses do and where those products come from. That is more so a state issue, less a county issue. So early on, when we set this out in the first meeting, we had stated that we're going to focus primarily on those large impact areas that we control. What would they be? First of all, they would be actually the governmental facilities and buildings, the parks, the recreation facilities. We would also be looking at our own internal efficiencies of the program, and so far as continuing to make sure that we have the best sort of fuel-efficient vehicles, as well as Jacobs, all of our internal efficiencies. But we have really tried to stay to what we what the NSCUD board as an independent district can control. There are a number of glass recycling. There are a number of uses for tires, but those are not things that we actually control and get a big bang for the buck. When you see on TV, at National Geographic, all sort of science programs, for those of you that out there are recycling and solid waste, wannabe wonks, right? No, kind of be like that. So when you look at that, you have to realize that a lot of those are programs in other countries and national programs that come down from the legislative authority holding power seat, which in this case would be the federal government. We as a district are not going to be able to move that needle very much on these other issues. What we have said is, as issues have come up relating to glass recycling and others, we can inform the county, in this case counties, about what those issues are, and legislative delegation, because they hold the power keys, if you will, to make those things happen, to move that needle. But as a district government, we don't have the authority and we don't have the ability to make those things happen.
Well, basically, what I was thinking, the villages are really a victim of a way of life to a certain degree. I mean, they would, whatever products are available, they buy. What I'm saying is a consulting firm, the consulting firm talk to manufacturers about methods they have or what they're incorporating into their products that they sell.
Normally, and that's a good point, normally the way this happens though is that the firms who manufacturing firms, they feel pressure in what their bottom line, the dollars, And so they feel pressure when there's additional taxes and imports and fees that are imposed by those governmental entities that can do so. So we could pay with the dollars from ENSCA, our consultant, to actually go out and do this, but it would be very, it wouldn't be very fruitful. It just would not be very beneficial.
Separate from that, we work for several named industries, apparel companies, bottling companies, and we've been helping them with their sustainability plans. And part of that is how do they recycle, or how do they process the material, or how do they produce their product. So we do have some experience, and we are working independent of this project.
Independent and not funded by you all as far as money. Thank you. Yeah, that's right. Did you want to maybe have people come up to the microphone? I normally come up to and have them speak from the podium. Sir, would you come on up here? Everyone wants to see you and enjoy you. So, there
I'm actually shocked that the village's recycling is only 37% are participating in this. I put out probably twice as much recycling as I do solid waste. Every week, I look at my neighbors and they all have their recycling out, so I'm like I said, shocked about that. One comment, if only, I'm talking to a local recycler, he told me that the only profitable thing he can recycle is aluminum and metal. Paper waste is no longer, I'm going way back to being a Boy Scout, collecting newspapers for my troop. That was profitable. He says it's no longer profitable. I'm wondering if we restrict or just change what we put in recycling is something that's profitable, meaning aluminum and metal. Just collect that. If everything else is going to solid waste disposal, why are we separating it, or why are we paying somebody to separate it? Only have it go to the recycle place. Or maybe you just collect recycling quantities, like the first Thursday of the month or Friday of the month you collect metal. Maybe the other ones you collect paper waste. I know that's a little bit of a work on individuals, but it's our plan. The other thing I'm wondering about is the brush and yard waste. During especially certain times of the year, that truck just drives around. He comes down our street and then there's nobody there. He's just whipping through the neighborhoods. It seems to me like a big waste of gas and energy and time. Maybe there's a call-in thing. If you put out trash, you call the day before or 2 days before, and it gets put into a GPS system, and the truck driver knows, okay, I got to go down this street. And I would think a lot of the people who don't do their own stuff, the landscapers take it away. I guess that's my thoughts.
A couple points. First of all, the recycling rate is based on the tonnage, so the participation rate is actually higher than 37%. Now,
My recycling weighs a whole
lot. I know, I'm like you. There's weeks where I have more in my recycle bin than I do in my trash can. But on average, 30%, 37% of waste by weight. So if half of the people are recycling, but they're not putting out as much recyclables as they are garbage, then that's why the number it's not a straight linear number with participation. Your weight is always less than your participation. We've done some anecdotal percentages, and it's probably more like 50 to 70% of the people recycle. But what we also found is not everybody recycles every week. They may save it up and do it every 2 weeks. So again, with that 50% set outs, you have more people who actually participate. So that was one thought. The other thought is regarding truck efficiency. That's something we can look at. especially during the winter months when the yard waste is low, maybe there is a different way or different equipment, and we can be more efficient, be more cost effective.
I mean, very much those comments are exactly why we're formulating a plan. The model that we're operating under was established decades ago, and this model is actually something, as you saw in the first two meetings, and just was recapped at the beginning of this meeting, really does not serve us well, either financially and or environmentally. And so the changes that we're looking at relating to the operations, relating to what we pick up, relating to where the final disposal for the primary solid waste stream goes, is very much apropos to this discussion. We are collecting nearly everything that can be collected, but yet we only have 3 or 4 of those product lines for recyclables that have any sort of return on investment. And even with the return on the investment, when you look at it, it's only pennies on the dollar. Now that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do that, because for the environment, if you look at the long haul, it's the right way to go. But the problem is that if you collect everything and you have a fairly sizable reject so far as loads that come in that are containing contamination, whether it be, we talked about at the first 2 meetings, food products, we talked about at the first 2 meetings, styrofoam, we talked about all of those waste products that are actually put in to the recycling stream that cause waste, that also can lower that tonnage that's actually available for recycling. So your comments are right on insofar as what the board is going to be considering changes to what is collected, how it's collected, and also where that final disposal place goes.
We've got some more information. We can talk about the recycling options specifically. I guess at this point, if we look at these goals, if we look at these goals and focus on these goals, is this what was said at the last meeting? Is this where the village wants to go?
Thank you. Just, again, key comment here. I think your bullet point 2 is the most important one. This is the first time, I've been in the villages now 12 years. It's the first time I've seen something like this. I have no idea. We do recycling. Summer in May, we go to the recycling stations there and everything. We try to do the right thing. But we don't know we're doing the right thing because we don't have the information. I think it's critical that everybody in the villages gets this information. Has it been mailed out?
This information is downloaded from our website. It's also handed out at resident academy, CBD orientation on the squares, and it's handed out annually at all of the government day. So one of the things that I think is a very good point, we need to do a better job at public education, and also we need the public to interface. One of the things we see at all the levels of government, whether it be county or state, is when people say, I don't like this, but yet they don't come to the meetings. And I'm like, how do we know that? How do we know you don't like it if you don't come in? And I'll say to Cliff, who has an organization, VHA, they have 200-300 people in a meeting, and we go and we speak and we say, why aren't they coming to the meetings when we're setting rates? If you look around the room, 135,000 residents outside the room, and in the room I just counted 63 people.
Oh, I agree. And that's what I'm saying, that you're not going to get the people coming to meetings, but if you get it in their hands, they're going to know what they should do.
We can do a better job in the engagement, certainly a big issue. You're right.
And that's what we've talked about with the education. It's an outreach as opposed to what has historically been a response. If you called in and asked, you would get it. Now we're going to look at more of an outreach program than a response-based system.
Supervisor Bradshaw's question. Why don't we have them come up so people can actually, and while she walks up, this is Supervisor Bradshaw, District 10.
Yeah, Chris Bradshaw, Supervisor District 10. What are each of the 3 counties doing, Sumter, Marion, and Lake? And is it possible for us to pay them to have us piggyback off of their efforts?
So I can speak to two of the counties. So Sumter does not offer a curbside pickup. For Sumter County, you would have to take the individual solid waste and recyclables down to Sumterville. They have a single place for a deposition of both those streams off of 470. And so we could do that, but that would be I think that would be a pretty arduous thing for all of the Sumter County districts, because Basically from here, you're looking at about 14 miles. So every time you have a load of trash, in more of a suburban development as we are in the villages, you'd have to store that and or make every other day or every 3-day trips down there. The other issue is up in Lake County. Lake County as well does not offer this same service. So if you look at Lake County, the service that they offer, a lot of it for what you all receive is drop-off, resident drop-off. They do have curbside collection, but they do not have the frequency that we have, and they don't have actually the pickup, on-call pickup that we have for ball guns, and maybe that's not needed. Certainly working with the other jurisdictions to the extent that we can achieve a benefit, such as recycling of hazardous materials, and we partner with both Sumter County in their program. You know, that's going to be coming up in about a week, and so that's for those hazardous materials. So we partner with them where it's advantageous in a number of areas. An excellent point, and where we actually would see unless the majority of residents said that they wanted to do that sort of Sumter drop-off, we could certainly do that. I mean, that I think would be a major sort of shift insofar as storage of recyclables and solid waste during the week, as well as the actual transport of them down to that Sumterville area. I can say with much confidence that the county does not have in its current budget year 1920 any expansion of their recycling program in Sumter County. About 86% of the villages lies within Sumter County, and as you know, growing.
Thank you for holding this meeting. My name is Glenn Rosaza. I just started teaching at the Richmond Academy, and my course is called Florida Ecology, Saving Paradise. And I just had a class last night on this subject. So the main, what I ask is, how are we handling, or are we handling e-waste? Is there a program out there that's in the works, or?
So that's why I just mentioned we partner with Sumter County for e-waste, and that program is actually going to be next weekend.
Okay, so then, do
Twice
you know
a
how
year.
it's going to work?
Yeah.
Right now for collection?
Yeah, so twice a year it's a drop-off service, and twice a year they do collection.
You said that?
Pardon?
Do you say that?
I just said a minute ago in response to Supervisor Bradshaw's question that there is a partnership that we have with Sumter County with e-waste hazardous materials. I didn't say it as eloquently as you did, but e-waste is electronic waste. And so twice a year in April and November, there is a partnership with Sumter County. There are various times throughout the year that some entities, private, offer collection intervals. I know that the VHA partnered with various groups last year and the previous year. I don't think there is one this year. So the e-waste and hazardous waste collection is at Lake Oklahoma Park, and I believe it's on November 2nd. Is that correct? Do you remember? For the flyer we sent out, I think it's November 2nd at Lake Oklahoma Park. The flyer is in the district government, district weekly bulletin. It's also on Sumter County site and our site as well.
If I may, yeah.
Sure, if you need the microphone, we're recording the meeting.
Oh, okay. I know that is great to have a collection spot like that, but for the residents, getting over there could be an issue. So I'm wondering if there could be a pickup spot somewhere in the villages that we could take it there. That could be
So
taken.
Lake Oklahoma is right on State Road 44.
Yep.
So from the majority of locations in the villages we're talking about that are in Sumter, we're talking about really less than about 9 miles.
Right.
So if you're talking about curbside pickup.
No.
Oh, okay. So
I'm just talking about a local drop-off point that can then take that, like a transfer station. Then somebody just takes it down there. So anyhow, that was just a thought. Okay.
Bernard Gunther, Village of Largo. I do have one question. What is the current status of what are they doing with glass in recycling? I know at one time, this goes back a while, when I was involved with solid waste they were actually grinding it down and using it as aggregate in pavement. Is that still happening?
That's one use, or it's being used to make new glass. But right now, glass is being subsidized because right now it's either being used as aggregate or it's being processed and being used to make new glass. Usually the clear glass is more value, and that can be used to make new glass. When you have mixed collet, that has less value. It can't be used as much. But, and I have some numbers we'll get to shortly. It's actually a subsidized program. You have to pay to get rid of recycled glass.
I just want to make a comment generally on history. I was involved served for 15 years on a municipal utilities authority that was responsible for solid waste up in New Jersey. And to go back in the history of recycling, that came to be an issue in New Jersey because all the landfills were getting filled and they had nowhere to take the trash. That was the impetus for the recycling program. Well, what happened? They did surveys and found out that people did not want to do what's called source separation. In other words, separate your glass, even you supposedly were supposed to separate your glass by color, etc., etc. So they came up with this, they called it commingled or single source, which would get sent to a MRF for processing. The problem is that I don't remember back what kind of education took place, but there was some education. And I really commend you for the recommendation, and I think that the citizens themselves realize, and I brought this up before in meetings, that education really is the key. I walk around my neighborhood, I do a walk almost every day, and when they put out the recyclables, I see containers that are not washed out. They leave caps on. This is so basic to proper recycling. I think the gentleman I saw here before from Jacobs, there in the back with the mustache, at the presentation here to the POA, he mentioned that 20, I guess, and that was published recently, that 80% is sent to landfills, mainly because of contamination. It's got really nothing, and I don't like us constantly pushing the blame on China that they're not taking our recyclables. Well, nobody else will take them either when they're contaminated. So that's a big issue. Another thing I think, and Mr. Bayer pointed out, which I think is very key, the form of government that we have here at CDD, you have very little control. And one of my bugaboos is the developer is so involved in a lot of decisions. Start number one with recycling. I was involved at that time with the Environmental Club here when they established recycling. Well, he insisted you could not put containers out. It had to be put into plastic bags. That's his, so we have no control over that. The developer put that stipulation in. Now, what happens to those plastic bags? I toured the facility where they do the processing. It was, I think it's solid, I guess it's waste management. And I asked the question, what happens to the plastic bags when you take the garbage, or when you take the recyclables out? Oh no, it gets thrown in the garbage. And we all know, and you've seen these reports, on how long it takes for plastic to disintegrate in a landfill. So to me, and unfortunately, we have no control over that. And Mr. Bayer pointed that out. I think it's just a shame. The other thing I wanted to mention, one of the reasons I got involved in New Jersey was they were hell-bent on putting incinerators in every county. We used to call it caveman technology, burning. Now, I've recently seen some reports where they are lauding what Singapore is doing with waste to energy. Well, that's all fine, but garbage at the old ego, garbage in, garbage out. If you put high BTU, for example, plastic, and some, I guess, printed materials, they do, I don't know if everybody uses soy-based color these days, but they have contaminants in them, and unless you properly control that, you release contaminants into the air. And it's not just the contaminants, but it's the ash that's left over afterward that fly ash. People have to wear masks to deal with that, because if you deal with it, you just disturb it a little bit, it goes in the air and you can breathe it in. So we have to be very careful, and I think there was some mention in his presentation about the possibility of using, I think Waste Management operates a what they call waste-to-energy facility. But I think it's very limited, and I think it's, it's just the control of the air. The monitors have to be there to control the air that comes out of it.
So just two comments. The first is the container issue is that is correct. That is set in your deed restrictions because you don't want to have as you see in other communities you drive around, you don't want to have the containers, the garbage cans outside. Many of our units are single car garage. In the historic area, many of the units are carport, and even those that you see that are double car garage, I would just encourage you to look inside and see how full those garages are as we move down here and lack basements and attics. So that the reasoning for not having collection containers, which a lot of communities have, is because a lot of people store them outside and the way it looks. As you all know, we spend a lot of time on the aesthetics and the environmental quality of the villages as well, and how it looks is very important. With regard to energy from waste or waste energy, I totally agree that incinerators years ago were caveman technology. Anything but today. For the board members who have gone and actually gone through a waste energy facility, from the district manager, Oakney, who actually operated one for 16 years as part of Alexandria, the 10th most densely populated community in Virginia, and in the nation, 10th most densely populated, in the middle of Alexandria, and to the people of Honolulu, Singapore, and also downtown Paris that just have received within the last 5 years brand new energy from waste plants. I would challenge anyone to take a look at those stack outputs, which are monitored on a minute-by-minute basis, and look at that technology. It is just incredible. But it is well founded, your comments on the incineration. That was just an abomination when not controlled by bag houses or wet scrubbers and other advanced technology. So
On the plastic that goes in, that you still have to have a recycling program.
Absolutely.
Waste energy.
This is like one of our biggest fans, absolutely.
And one of the other points you mentioned was the 20% or the 80%. If you look at the numbers, it's 80% of the material that's collected is recycled. 20%, and actually in some communities it's 30%. Here in the villages, it's 15 to 20%. But nationally, we're seeing numbers of 30 and 35% in some communities of the material that's set out for recycling that goes to the landfill. So generally, 80% is recycled and 20% is contamination or rejects. That is based on what is set out. You want to come up I'm going to talk a little bit more about recycling. So if you have a question and you want to talk about recycling or one of the disposals, we'll have 2 other breaks to do that. So right now, I'm really looking at, what are the goals, and is this where the district wants to be moving?
This is one of our supervisors who always sports some very trendy socks, Jerry Noel.
A couple of quick questions regarding the flexibility that's talked about in bullet number 3, to remove materials in the future to keep program cost effective. Yes, but you have to be able to respond not only to the markets, but to the regulations, both state and federal. And that leads me to the cost-effective statement. Early on, you talked about the increase in the monthly assessment for the service, and you're still not meeting the necessary financial demand. Besides adding to the cost, have we looked at ways to be more cost-effective in the actual operation? For instance, and I'll just throw this one out there, I'm not saying I'm for or against it. Instead of twice a week, what about once a week? How much does that reduce the cost? And can you still, within any given household, manage solid waste with only weekly collection? Or is that too much of a demand on the space in the garage?
Well, I'm going to hold that thought, because that's an excellent discussion point we're going to have both today and before.
Good morning. I'm Sue Michelson, and I'm proud to say that I had started the Village Greens Environmental Club, and we were the group that pushed the villages to have recycling. So I've been paying attention to recycling for a long time. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for what you've been doing in trying to educate the community and to take into consideration their feelings and bring your expertise to it. What I like to say is a very simple thing, and that's basically that what I've seen over the years is that people don't believe that you're really recycling. And so they leave, they just say, well, we're not going to bother. And believe me, I tried to educate the community. Every time we would have the snowbirds leave and the other people come in, I would provide paperwork to show what we were doing and what they had to do, since they obviously wouldn't know. But you have to do something about making people realize, or giving them the confidence that you are doing the recycling, because that still, after all these years, is what I hear. Oh, they're just throwing it in together, and they're not doing anything about it. And that's the problem. Aside from that, is I think the single stream recycling is a major problem, because that's where you get the mixture. And I think you should seriously consider the separation. Thank you.
Brett Benson, Village of Palo Alto. In regard to the goals here, they're all great. The only thing I didn't see is what we talked about a little bit, including the gentleman that has the gray socks on. And that is, what he talked to was where you can sort of make sure it comes out clear here, because I assume these will maybe be on the website and whatnot, is that you're always looking at efficiencies associated with the cost of doing it, whether it's vehicles, whether it is sometime over the course of time, you could go to a container kind of thing. Maybe it's because you then regulate it to say, hey, if your containers can be outside, it's like a lot of people do, they put cover around their air conditioner units. You don't always look at that, you know, whatnot. But again, as you look at those things, I think it'd be clear if it was in the goals that that's what you're always looking at too. Because the only one that saw it was cost effective was removing the material that was associated with it. So if it was a little clearer in the goals, that might be worthwhile. It was sort of embedded in what's maintaining a high level of satisfaction, or sort of embedded in flexibility, make sure it's sort of clear. Because I think that would be helpful to everyone to know that, oh, as they're looking at this kind of program, we're still looking at how can we keep our costs down and doing everything we're doing and maintain the program. One thing I'll make comment on, I do a lot of the paper associated with some of the bins where you put the paper in and they collect it every week over like the Lutheran church and all that. And on the side of the bin, it says, do not put this, and this in this bin. It's clear on the side of the bin, and every time I go over to have to move paper around there so people can put stuff in there, everything is in there, from plastic to everything else. I'm going like, can't people read the side of the bin and not put it in there? So to me, it gets to, again, you want to recycle what you can, but if you make it simplistic for everybody and what they have to recycle, which maybe then gets to it's one or two items only right now or something, even though I agree with the point of trying to recycle all I can, that might make it easier on the residents. Oh, the only thing we are recycling is this. It's a couple things, not trying to go, oh, start from, oh, I shouldn't put it in there. Oh, so, those are,
And just with regard to efficiencies, I would invite everyone here, and maybe you'll tell a friend and they'll tell a friend, that on the districtgov.org website, there is a balanced scorecard. Each of the district meetings this past month, including NSCUD and our committee meetings, we went over that. That represents all of across the board, the all funds, all the funds, the savings. So this year, our district government budget, if you look across all the funds, actually was reduced by, it's well over $3 million. So that's a good start. But again, as a resident, and as I understand you all are residents, it's important for us to be good stewards of all of our activities, whether it be for the fire department, for solid waste collection, for fleet management. So take a look at that. I mean, that's excellent. And the comments relating to efficiency, I think, are right on. I'm sure the board members.
Yeah, when we developed that goal, we talked about satisfaction, and satisfaction was not just the service, but also the cost. But I agree, let's separate that out and put cost effective in there. Yep.
Mark Hayes, District 4 Supervisor.
I'm Mark Hayes, I live in the village of Piedmont. 2 points. One is that the city that I came from, they were city employees that picked up the garbage. We dealt our own garbage. And what they did, particularly with recyclables, they would look into the container. Now there they have a great big round containers, and I don't propose that at all. But it would make more sense with the plastic bags. And if you did not clean the glass and the materials that went in it, they put a great big sticker on it, rejected, and it was up to you to get rid of that equipment. So that was the way. And we had a very profitable recycling process going on in the city of Cudahy. The second point is I just came back from vacation, and on the way up I was listening to the radio. I was going through Sirius, and I listened to NPR, and there was an article on there that discussed that manufacturers are starting to look at recycling. More particularly, Coca-Cola is looking specifically to going to the aluminum bottles like they do with the like beer cans, that type of stuff. They want to get away from the plastic because they're realizing the impact that it has on the public. Thank you.
Yeah, you're going to see shortly, Casante, which is Coca-Cola's water brand, they are switching to aluminum bottles is the shape. So yeah, you are seeing manufacturers move towards back to aluminum bottles. So let's a couple more questions here as it relates to the goals, and then we're going to move on. Well, I'm sorry, someone who hasn't spoken yet, and we'll come back to it. Ma'am?
Hi, I'm Marilyn Shields, Honeybrook, and like Sue Michelson, this is an area that I've been long interested in, and I'd just like to address a few points. The education part of what can go into recycling is so important. Now, if I'm questioning whether something can go into that clear bag, I'm not likely to go to the internet, but I do read the Daily Sun every day. And there's no reason why once a month on the front page, I know it would compete with quilting and everything else. The Daily Sun could, in an obvious place on the front page, do a little 2x3 column of what, just to remind people, and that would help a lot. Like styrofoam, cannot go into it, but people do it. The other thing is the bulk waste. I also try to walk every single morning. I can't get over what I see out to go into the garbage. Perfectly good furniture, tables, various things like that. There are so many agencies within 5 miles, thrift shops, Habitat for Humanity that will actually come and pick up. Now, they certainly want good condition things. Some of these things are brand new or look perfectly good. And I think that that's something that has to be looked at. And I think, and this is what I think is very important, I think it's time for America to look towards some entrepreneurial thing whereby we could do what China is doing. And what comes to my mind is the overbuilding of jails for profit there's no reason why prisoners, select prisoners, could be used to do this kind of work. And I think it's something that could be explored, and I don't know if it will ever come to fruition, but we have to start taking care of that if we can't ship. And I don't even know what it costs to put a container ship with things to be sent out of the country.
Let's do one more discussion point here on the goals, and then we can talk about recycling. Two more. And we'll talk about recycling, and we'll break, and then we'll talk about disposal options. Because I think some of these are related, interrelated. And I do agree with you, it should be on the front page of the newspaper every day. What's more important than garbage?
Pictures of people having lunch.
Good morning, I'm Brian Wilson from the Village of Alhambra. We had a recent resident meeting, and believe it or not, the subject of recycling came up. It was discussed by the residents. And what we were talking about specifically was glass.
Yeah.
And there's a couple, the residents were in a dilemma. Glass, a high percentage is rejected for contamination. So the solution is clean it. Then their water bill goes up. So which do we do? Do we throw away contaminated glass that are rejected? Or do we get a higher water bill to clean it? We did not have an answer, but we thought that the goals for the program could address something like that. There's so much preparation that can be expected, but maybe too much destroys the program.
Words of wisdom, Brian Livesey, Board Supervisor.
Kathy McKelvey, I'm the Assistant Vice President of the North area for the VHA, and I live in Rio Grande. And my question is regarding efficiency. Could it be more cost effective to collect recyclables the same day as you do the yard waste, instead of doing it on the day that you do garbage collection? I don't know whether with the trucks, but it's a thought. Also, I agree with the previous lady that spoke that nobody's going to go on a website to find out. And I've been trying to think of ways that the Daily Sun can put the things in the same way they put in the little blurbs about the county senior care programs, wildlife, and that kind of thing. So, and the other question would be, I think in terms of what happens to stuff, we do a lot of paper recycling because we read the Daily Sun, every week. Can that be burnt with the lawn yard waste to go to that energy, or waste to energy, so that rather than have it with recycle, which would go back to my other thing, is put the papers out with yard waste.
So, excellent point. Let me ask, how many people have one of these? So if you have one of these, you can always look at the Daily Sun. It may or may not be in there. We run it 3 times a year, but it always can be more frequent. But if you have one of these, you can actually, you don't want to go on the website? Call us. 753-4508. Those people sit there and take all calls from barking dogs to what can go under their recycling bag to actually when ARC, Architecture Review Committee approval, to what time a meeting is, to who the lady over there in the tan sweater is taking notes, all sorts of questions. And they answer customer service, 753-4508. Please call them directly. I mean, they can answer any of your questions. And if they can't, they come and get someone who can, or they connect you to who can.
It's interesting because when we did our voting at the last meeting, there was complete disagreement about the best type of education. We asked both a positive question and a negative question. One was, how do you want to receive information? And the other was, how do you not want to receive information? And people either wanted the new printed version or they wanted electronic, go on the website. And it was pretty evenly split between. So there is no right or wrong. I think what we need to do is both, right? We can't rely on just one. So it was interesting because when we were looking at the results, it was roughly a 50-50 of this is what we want and it was the same answer for this is what we don't want. So let's talk a little bit about recycling because that's a lot of the topics we've heard. So what currently happens? We place material in a clear bag at the end of the driveway and it's picked up for collection. Recyclables are serviced, each household is serviced once per week. Approximately 55 tons of recyclables are collected each collection day. We use 6 trucks to do that. So, what's recyclable? What isn't recyclable? This was one of the topics of discussion. This is taken from the brochure. We will continue to get the information out there. But you can see, plastic and glass bottles and containers, paper, cardboard, food and beverage containers, food and beverage cartons. We don't want the styrofoam, we don't want the shredded paper. So we're going to continue to get this information out in various ways as part of the education program. Cost of recycling compared to disposal. The district's cost to recycle is higher than the cost of landfill. Current cost of landfill is about $28 per ton. The current cost to recycle is about $80 per ton after revenue. So the more we recycle, the more it's going to cost you as a resident. Your annual assessment would increase. So let's look at those numbers. So this is based on recent market conditions. This is what the district's seeing as cost. So if you look at newsprint, newspaper, it has no market value. Okay? And it represents 21% of the waste stream. So this material, this is clean material. It's recyclable material, and this is after it's been processed. So it's been sent to the MRF, it's been cleaned up, and once it's cleaned up, it's been baled. So it's sitting there at the loading dock, and it has no value at that point. Corrugated cardboard, for example, is worth a lot of money, $35 per ton. It only represents a smaller portion of the weight of the recyclable stream. Mixed paper, again, is like newspaper. It currently doesn't have a value. Aluminum cans are worth a lot of money. You look at basically it's a penny a can is the material, the metal value of that can. Steel cans also has value. PET plastics is worth money. HDPE is your milk jugs. PET is going to be your clear soda bottles. But mixed plastics, and that's going to be your number 3 through number 7s, have no value. Glass has a negative value. You have to pay to get rid of glass. And then residuals, T&D, that's for transport and disposal. You have to pay to get rid of it. If you look at this and you look at the percentages, 13% is residuals, so 13% contamination. And that's good. That's pretty good when you consider the national average. I mean, I've seen 20 to 30%. I've seen some clients with greater than 30% contamination. So from that aspect, the village is doing well. And if you start to say, well, what if we drop out those materials that cost us money? You're taking out newspaper, you're taking out glass, that's about half of the waste stream. So your recycling rate would go from 37% to about 20%. So when we look at this value, and the $32 at the bottom is the average. So this is the average value of a ton of recyclables. It's worth about $32 per ton. You get most of the revenue from the aluminum cans and the high-value plastics. costs $22 to transport the material. It costs $90 to process it at the recycling center. So the net cost is about $80 per ton. So each ton of recyclables that you put out at the curb, that's collected, is going to be costing about $80 to process and take it back to the marketplace. Now, the benefit to recycling is the environmental benefit. It's the manufacturing benefit. The problem is that benefit isn't realized by the village. Yes, if we recycle aluminum or we recycle newsprint, let's use newsprint. If you recycle newsprint, you don't have to cut down trees in the Pacific Northwest, or you don't have to cut down pine trees in Virginia, process them, have emissions, burn energy, etc. But those benefits aren't realized here in the villages. Those benefits are realized across the country, or aluminum across the world. Some aluminum is mined in South Africa, shipped to South America to be processed into aluminum ingots, and then shipped to the United States to be processed into automotive parts. If we recycle aluminum, we don't need all that processing and shipping, so we have less environmental impact, less consumption of fuel, but that benefit is realized here, that benefit is realized globally. So that's sort of the trade-off with recycling, is what we're doing here has a positive impact, but it impacts others. So this is where we're at from a cost standpoint. So when you hear us say it costs $80 a ton for processing, that's after we transport, process, and sell that material. So it's a net price. Education. I think we all are in agreement we need to do better, and we need to do it as an outreach as opposed to wait for the phone call. And that plays a big piece of it. And partly, and we haven't touched on it a whole lot lately, but part of what we can also help with education is reducing the amount of waste generated. Provide information on how do you purchase bulk of used furniture. Get information out there on Habitat for Humanity, Purple Heart, Goodwill. They will come and get your furniture at no cost. So that can be part of this, is how do you reduce the amount of waste? And then how do we make the program more efficient? We should really, how do we reduce contamination and focus on the materials? So, we want the aluminum cans, we want the cardboard, we want the plastics. And so the education can help reduce contamination, which is going to reduce cost, and help us improve, especially in those targeted programs. So what potential options do we have? I'm hearing some things today, but we were looking at 4 major options. First is continue what we have. What you have now is a good program. It encompasses most of the materials that communities throughout Florida and throughout the country recycle. Stop recycling those materials that have no market value. It's the second option. So stop collecting newspaper, mixed plastics, and glass. So we would only be focusing on the number 1 and number 2 plastics, cardboard, aluminum, and steel. Improve recycling under the current program for education. I think if we do implement education, and we can see that as hiring a staff person with the district and having that person do outreach, that can help. That can help the program. And then increase recycling. We can increase recycling. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be costly. But there are ways we can add more materials to the program. So let's look at what do each of these options, what's the impact on recycling, and what's the impact on the residents. So if we continue the current program, that's going to increase the cost about $1 per month per household. So like we said, the current program isn't covering cost, and part of that is because the cost of recycling has increased. And the current recycling rate is about 37%. So what if we stop recycling the non-revenue materials? So we have the current program, we take out those materials. We still need to increase the household assessment. We cannot reduce the household assessment even by taking out those materials. So So we take out those materials, and it would be an increase of about 50 cents per household per month. But the recycling rate would drop from 37% to about 20%. So you would see basically a 50% reduction in the amount of material that was recycled. If we continue the current program and improve recycling through education, that's going to cost about $1.20 per month. So it's about 20 cents more per household for a robust education program. We're going to get a little bit improvement on the recycling rate. I would say you're probably looking at a 10 or 20% improvement in the recycling. But we're also going to be reducing the amount of contamination. Now, the way recycling is calculated, if I go back a page, the way recycling is currently calculated is it's measured as the tons that we ship out. So it includes that residual at the bottom. Everybody does. Everybody's recycling rate does that. So it's what we send out to be recycled, because we don't know what contamination is in there until after the fact. I think we could get that 13% down to 5%, 6%. I think we could really cut it significantly through a good education program. But what that does is that takes tonnage out of your recyclables. So it doesn't quite look as good as it is, but the reality is, instead of sending, here you're sending 87% of the material, really it's going to go to the market, we'll be sending 95%. So while the recycling rate calculation may not be as impressive, I think it will make a difference. It will make a positive difference. The other option is to do a more significant increase, $3, maybe $5 even, and try to add materials. It's going to be difficult. There's not a whole lot more materials out there. One waste stream that people add in are the mixed glasses, cookware, window panes. That's a tough one. There's not much, we can't even sell good glass. Now you're trying to sell bad glass. The other option is trying to look at food waste and organic waste. That's the other area, but that's expensive. For food waste, you've got to start with a collection program. So these are sort of the options, sort of the four options we're looking at. Continue the current program, stop recycling materials that don't have a revenue stream, continue the current program, but improve recycling through education, and then look to try to increase recycling. But that's going to become expensive with a limited return in the short term. Now, one of the other things I want to touch on, and Mr. Bear started on that, is the potential to recycle at district facilities and commercial establishments within the village. So the district has about 150 occupied buildings, and they have more than 1,000, about 1,250 full and part-time staff. That doesn't include users. So, this building here has so many staff, but there's 70 of us here today. There's numerous commercial establishments, including restaurants and offices within the villages. And they generate a lot of material that can be recycled. Now, unfortunately, the district has limited statutory authority on those facilities. So we may look at more of a voluntary program. Based on our collection records, we're estimating about 7,500 tons of waste per year come from these commercial facilities and from the district buildings. So there's an opportunity to recycle some of that material. So what we're talking about is a phased approach to implement the program. And really, you can target buildings that generate a lot of cardboard and a lot of beverage containers. They are the high value and high volume numbers on the commercial sector. It's going to require an investment though. We have to buy bins. So you need bins for inside building. You need dumpsters out back. You need to change the collection program. And you need to educate the employees as well as the guests and the users. So when you walk in here, you need to understand what is we have recycling bins as opposed to just trash bags. So what would it look like? On the left are recycling bins that you have, that one actually is waste and recycling. So you have paper, plastics, cans, and a trash bin. On the right-hand side is a 96-yard dumpster car. It's about 4 feet tall, 2 feet by 2 feet. You have to, in a building like this, you have front of house and back of house. So this is front of house, back of house is through the doors. That's where kitchen, supplies, etc. are. So front of house, you're going to want something that has a nice appearance, more of the four-slot container. And in the back of house, you're going to have more of a blue bin, 96-gallon bin. So if you have a kitchen service or beverage containers, that's where they would be going. So you wind up putting multiples of these in each of the buildings. And then, what happens when you collect the material? I've been involved with several clients that started to collect recyclables. They did a great job, but they didn't have a plan to get rid of them. They didn't have somebody to pick them up. So now we have to look at how we modify the dumpsters outside. These two locations, the upper left, you can see there's 2 dumpsters in an enclosure. It may be possible to take one dumpster away and change one of those dumpsters to just recycling. So a restaurant, for example, a lot of cardboard, a lot of glass and bottles. They put a dumpster there for just the cardboard and glass and bottles in the blue bin. The facility on the right, we could probably get a couple blue bins in there on the side. We're worried about safety. You can't have people trying to climb, or workers trying to climb back in there to fill these containers or to take them out. But there's probably some space in the bottom right there where we could fit those blue bins, those blue dumpsters, into the dumpster enclosure. Not going to work here. I mean, this is a single container. There's not much space there. So if you start to implement this, we need to look at how many of these dumpster enclosures do we need to modify in order to have a place to accumulate those recyclables. So that's what we're looking at right now. That's what the district's thinking about, is how do you phase this in? Do you start with district buildings that we know generate a lot of cardboard, or district buildings that generate a lot of beverage containers? I mean, ideally, we'd like to have a bin everywhere you have a soda machine. Every break room should have a bin. So that's one of the things that's under discussion. So thoughts, I mean, we talked about the 4 options that we're looking at on recycling, and then we talked about the district and commercial establishments establishing a recycling program with those businesses. Sure. Christine? And then we'll-
Again, Christine Bradshaw, Supervisor, District 10. If part of the expense is sorting, I'm wondering if we can promote dividing up the recyclables at our homes. In one plastic bag, you put aluminum cans, another plastic bag, you put the milk jugs, and another what is now called the LBBFAs, the little brown boxes from Amazon, which and so if we could do it at our home, I don't know if that would help with the expense of sorting. I used to live in Atlanta, and we had a farmer's market, and at the farmer's market at the far end were people who would handle recycling. So there were big bins like you saw in the picture there, and you would, if we go to Villages Grown, for example, which is the new place where we're going to get our vegetables, at that farmers market in Atlanta, they had one bin for glass, one bin for milk jugs, one bin for newspapers, one bin for, and, you know, people would just come and do their shopping, and then they would drop off their recyclables there. And then the other issue I wanted to bring up is, since this is a long-term plan that we're trying to develop, I'm still wondering what percent of our population is going to be Sumter population. Are we at the villages 25% of the Sumter population, 50%? I mean, if we're growing in our population, especially with Southern Oaks, I'm worried about 5 years down the line, how much of our trash is going to be, Sumter's trash. And can we not then do some better partnering with them and move some of that collection points closer to the villages?
So good points. And just for everyone in the audience, the actual growth in the villages south of 44 is not controlled by or overseen, if you will, by NSCUD. So that is a separate private contract that is not part of your administrative role. But we still can look for partnerships with Sumter County and the other counties.
The comment on collection about separating, I mean, the initial recycling programs, we did have multiple bins. And that was expensive because of the collection costs to collect either separately paper products and beverage containers, or paper, cardboard. I mean, I've seen some trucks with 5 or 6 different bins, and it was one bin always gets full first, so that you don't have a full truck, so it becomes inefficient. So what has driven the industry has been collection efficiency for the single stream, mixing everything together. The other piece of it is the infrastructure that's out there. Where do we send the material? We could, we could have residents bag 3 or 4 different types of recyclables. Do we collect that with 4 or 5 different trucks again? Or if we put that all into one truck, we then have to separate it out again. Even if we collect it in one truck, we have to have a place to take it that would take that high-grade material. They still have to process it. They still have to sort through it. And most of the processing facilities right now handle mixed recyclables. So it's a trade-off. Yes, you have better quality material, but the disadvantage is your collection costs will go up. And if you don't have a place to take it, if there's not the infrastructure of the recycling facilities to take it. That's correct. Yes, it's much more difficult. We have found participation is much higher with single stream than multi-bin. People like it easy.
Barbara Gaines, I live in the village of Calumet Grove, and I've learned a lot of things coming to these meetings, but the one thing I noticed today is that we have 4 options to change the recycling program, and somebody mentioned a 5th, and I'd like to bring that back up, and that is that every week we each put out probably 10 to 15 pounds of newspapers. And I used to put out a huge bag of shredding with my recyclables until I realized that it didn't work. So if the paper and the shredding and our newspapers can be burned, a simple thing would be for just that little part to go out with our, on the Wednesday day they pick up the yard waste, because that's all being burned. So we're talking about how many times the trucks go by and there's no yard waste to pick up. If we put out our newspapers and our shredding with our yard waste on Wednesdays, the trucks would be busy and we'd save something there. So that's the 3rd thing. I mean, the 4th, you've got 4 things up there. The 5th thing, I think, is modifying our current way we do it.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll add that as an option. We'll add that as an option. Include that and look at what the cost impact would be. But it makes a lot of sense that that material is going to the waste management facility.
John Colangro, CDE number 6 chairman, live in the village of St. Chase. Something it seems to permeate this entire discussion at every element of it, is the education. And I guess what I would, this is directed at Richard and my fellow CDD supervisors, I think we need a more dedicated staff approach to this. And if that means you have to come back to us and say, I need a couple more people to do this, I think that at least as one chairperson, I would support that strongly. I also think, however, the primary purpose of that group or individual should be to look at some more creative messaging. There's nothing wrong with our message. I don't think we're getting it out very creatively. Let me give you a couple examples. There are over 3,000 authorized interest groups within lifestyle groups within the villages. That doesn't count alumni associations and all those other groups that aren't officially in there because they might cover different parts of the county as well. All of those groups have regular meetings. They all use our facilities. You could walk into a facility and there could be a poster board, an information piece in every one of our facilities. Every one of these groups has a particular interest. If we had people who had time to look creatively at what is the message of those various groups, and what is it they're doing, or what is it we need to do that we could deliver a portion of this message. The message is the same, but sometimes you highlight different portions of it. You know, if you're a pickleball player, and you got a bag full of pickleballs that you're going to throw away because they're no good, or for golfers, you know, how many of you end up with a whole bunch of used balls, they don't go straight, so you want to get rid of them. What do you do with them? None of them go straight. It has nothing to do with the person at the end of the club. It's always at the bottom of the club with the problem. But so maybe if we looked at more creative messaging in what we're doing, we might start getting more attention. It must, you know, all this is good, but if we don't get people to buy in, let's face it, and I will say this is not as a chairman, but as one member, I'm spoiled. You know, I stick it out at the end of the driveway at the end of the twice a week and say, it's somebody else's problem. Somehow or another, you've got to convince me that it's not somebody else's problem. And maybe by focusing our messages, we might be a little more successful in that. I'll vote yes for once.
Hang on.
Sorry, I keep going off business. I'm Kathleen Burr from the village of Glenbrook, and actually one of the things I was going to talk about is I have heard of the shredding of paper being used by animal shelters. So that might be kind of one of the things outside the box that one of those people that wants to do some extra work contact the animal shelters and say, hey, is that an idea? I don't think you as paid staff should be spending the time on that when there's enough volunteers here in the organization. So that was one thought I had. Secondly, the specific answer on why our recycling isn't higher, my opinion, is rentals. Next door to us, we have a house that's worth more than $500,000 that's used as an Airbnb, and honestly, we feel like we see garbage out all the time. It's not out there just the day before. So, you know, yes, I understand your concern about aesthetics, but aesthetics of looking at garbage on a regular basis is not pleasant either. So, just a comment on that. And then third, this is my personal thing. We moved to the villages, and we were not doing yard debris, and we found where we are now, and I'm not saying exactly where I live, we use our garbage can now, and they take up our garbage can with our yard debris. I hated using those big bulky bags that are tall, etc. So, and I also use, if I don't have that much, a 5-gallon paint can. So there's different ways of doing that, and again, people take that up. So just a couple of thoughts on an individual basis that we find helpful for us.
One of the challenges is rentals. But again, part of that can be education. So part of the rental package is providing that information for the people who are coming in to do the rentals. Within the state of Florida, there's a program called Green Lodging. And if you notice, when you stay at many of the hotels, So there is, even within the state of Florida, there's a lot of information available as it relates to rentals and how to reach people that are here on a short-term basis.
We did that.
Oh, okay.
We did that for a while. Definitely did. Anyhow, what I really want to say is that we're facing a very difficult time in our lives. And global warming is going to impact our lives far beyond anything we have dreamed of. And we all are going to have to make changes. The first thing is, on that list of recycling, is to stop using, to refuse. That's really the first word. And when we stop buying so much and accumulating so much, we're not going to have so much garbage. And it sounds like, oh, you know, we are going to have to do this. This is important. But if you look at the whole picture, if we can just do this, control ourselves a little bit, and stop buying so much, and think about what's available. Another example is, I know that in my house, I used to use, I can't tell you how many baggies, or that little stretch stuff. Well, I've stopped. You could go on Amazon and buy these silicone bags that you can wash in the washing machine, put in the microwave, and use over and over again. Have you any idea how much you would save in plastic nonsense? That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, there was a program, an activity, if you will, on social media, and some of the industry was behind it. Plastic-free July. It started in July. Some people were slow, and they said, okay, let's make it plastic-free August, and then it became plastic-free 2019. But plastic-free July, and it was really focused on single-use plastics, your saran wrap, your plastic bags. And I said, okay, well, I can do this. I already use bags, tote bags, when I go to the grocery store. And I started to look at it, and even not using Tupperware. Okay, I already have the plasticware in my house, but change that to use glassware. And it's amazing how much, and it's hard, it's amazing how much you use. But when you stop and look at it, gee, I can make a choice. It does make a difference. So I mean, again, that can be part of the education. It's not just recycling, but source reduction. How do you not generate that material? It was interesting because, okay, I don't use plasticware, but I use a glass bowl, but it doesn't have a cover, so I use saran wrap as opposed to using Tupperware. So it just raises your awareness, is really what I'm saying. It's the activity that raises your awareness of how much you consume.
My name is Dan Warren. I live in the village of Gilchrist. I'm going to stay away from the philosophy of recycling. I think that we would all love to recycle everything. I think that's kind of a given. Secondly, with regard to education, I think that's a nice goal, but the reality is, I think, to have any successful program, you got to keep it simple. And it's pretty complicated right now, and the more complicated it gets, the less compliance I believe they're going to have. So I think you've got to take a look at systems that are very simple. I first started recycling when I lived in Danbury, Connecticut. We recycled newspapers 35 years ago, and that was it. There was a market for it, and it was real simple. So again, the more complicated we get, I think the less compliance you're going to have. And I'd like to offer a few comments to the board here in terms of what they can control or not control. And I think you have to take a look at what you can't control control, and one is the recycling markets. We see what's happened. 15 years ago, there were fabulous markets. Recycling programs responded to that. So we went from a real simple program to more complicated programs, and now the market, in my opinion, are forcing us back to a much more simplified recycling program. That chart that you had up there I thought was very interesting in terms of where the markets are and what the costs are for certain pieces of the waste stream. I guess I like to think out of the box a little bit. I'm a pretty pragmatic kind of person, forgetting the recycling philosophy. But I guess I would be interested in seeing an extreme the other way. Take a look at only recycling cardboard, only recycling newspaper. That has two goals. It can be burned, it's got high BTU content, and as a couple of individuals have already mentioned, it can be combined with the yard waste, which can also be burned. One pickup, those items. And it removes those items from a cost of $80 a ton and puts it into large BTU content. Everything else you don't recycle. Everything else goes now from a cost of $80 a ton to $30 a ton. And as far as the pickup goes, probably the same because the tonnage is the same. So you probably wouldn't have any savings in terms of the pickup. But what you do is you're simply moving that tonnage from a high-cost item to a lesser-cost item. I'd be very interested to see what those numbers look like. I think there would be a significant savings. And again, I'm removing the philosophy. I know some of you out there are like, oh my God, we're not recycling, we're not doing this. But I'm coming at it from a pragmatic standpoint, another way to look at it, another basis of comparison. Thank you.
Yeah, let's do one or two more questions, and then we're going to talk about some disposal options. But I think we can build into that mixing the paper and cardboard into a combustible stream.
Jim Chippewa, Palo Alto. A couple of things that I think didn't stand out is we're looking at an individual participation to recycle different materials. One thing that a gentleman here's from Connecticut, they have a deposit on plastic bottles and things in the north and some of the states. Why don't we integrate it to where you buy the material from, like the stores, and take the cardboard and the plastic bottles back in? Because most of the stores, the people that recycle the cardboard, they put balers in there for nothing just to take the cardboard. And some of these stores, it would really relieve the load as far as disposal or pickup from the from the government. That I think would be a easier way to recycle material, because we all go to the store once or twice a week and we just bring the bottles back or the cardboard back, let them recycle, get them involved in some of that stuff. They put it out there, so let them take it back.
Just real quick, ever since recycling here started in the villages, I've never put a newspaper, never put any paper in plastic bags. I bundle them up and tie them up, and they pick them up. Now, I don't know what to do with them. If it goes to incinerator, that's fine. But it's another way of not using plastic. Okay? The other thing is, and I brought this up before, I know Florida doesn't have this problem now, but this is what motivated us in New Jersey. The reason for other reason for recycling was because the landfills were getting full. They wouldn't take any more garbage. Number two, what is the effect of the garbage leaching here in Florida? We have a very high water table. We have one of the largest aquifers in the world under Florida. What is the long-term effect of all the garbage getting thrown in landfills? I know nobody wants to think 30 years ahead, but that's something to consider. That was one of the reasons to start recycling.
Hello, my name is Deb Butterfield, and I live in the village of Tamarind Grove. A couple of points. First, on education. I think we all are aware that many of us come to the villages to be blissfully unaware of what's going on around us. We came here to live a simpler, not more complicated life. But this is an issue that, as you've embarked on this process of creating this plan, gives us an opportunity to do something bold. We also all come from a different perspective. They did it this way in my community. They do it this way in Pennsylvania. But it says number 7 on the bottom of the carton. There is so much information overload about how these programs are done today that even if you try to stay aware, it's very difficult. So my thoughts are this. Let's do a bold program, as the gentleman suggested, a simple program, and if we're going to retrain people, let's retrain them all starting from the same plane and spend whatever resources we need to on that effort.
Thanks. I like that idea. I like the idea of bold but simple. Let's talk about options, disposal options. So what happens to the waste that isn't recycled? So we looked at what facilities are nearby, what facilities are around, both recovered material processing facilities or MRFs, composting facilities, energy from waste, landfill, and transfer station. Recognizing a transfer station doesn't dispose of material, it just moves the material from one location to another. So the approach we took was to identify what facilities were available, currently available, within about 75 miles of the villages. Screen facilities that would accept material from the villages. For example, Hernando County has a landfill. Well, we can take our waste there. No, the county has a policy, they don't accept material from out of the county. So just because there's a facility down the road, that facility may not accept material from out of the county. We determine the haul distance, how far it is to get there, and the tipping fee. And what was the total cost? And then what impact does it have on the household assessment? At this point, this is preliminary. We're still talking to facilities. We're still collecting information. There are a whole lot more facilities within 75 miles than you would think. So let's look at a couple of them. So this first figure is solid waste facilities. So this is where we could take our garbage. The green are facilities that would accept solid waste. The blue facilities are facilities that would not accept waste from the villages. And then the purple are ones where we're still collecting information as we're still collecting information. Now the 3 circles you see, the first one is 25 miles, the second circle is 50 miles, and the third circle is 75 miles. And that becomes important because you may have a cheap facility, but the cost to get it there may counteract the actual low tipping fee. So as you can see, the green facilities are the ones that are the closest, and we do know that they would accept solid waste from the villages. Next, we look at recycling facilities. So look at all these options. All this is from the state of Florida, Florida DEP database. But many of these facilities don't accept recyclables. It may be a junkyard. It may be a Goodwill store. So you really have to look into what are these facilities, because there's only a couple in the immediate area that would accept commingled single-stream recyclables. We've got a couple stars, a couple maybes we're still looking at, but a lot of oh gee, I saw a recycling center up in Hernando. Well, they only buy aluminum and metal and cardboard. So this is part of our process is to sort through what facilities are available. We also looked at facilities that accept yard waste. It may be a composting facility, it may be a waste energy facility, it may be a landfill, C&D, construction and demolition. So again, the green signify potential opportunities. The blue are not opportunities, and the purple we're still looking at. So one of the things I want to touch on is direct haul versus transfer. So direct haul, we use our collection trucks, and we drive to the facility and dump the waste. With transfer, we use the collection trucks, we take it to a transfer station, it's loaded into transfer trailers, tractor trailers, and then those trailers haul the waste from the transfer station to the disposal or processing facility. So that requires the separate construction and operation of a transfer station. Now, generally, direct haul is less expensive than transfer when the distance is normally it's about 20 miles or so. But here in Florida, and looking at the tonnages in the village, it's probably about 30 miles. So it's cheaper for us to drive to a landfill that's 30 miles away than it would be to build a transfer station and operate it and consolidate. You know, you can get 5 or 6 garbage trucks into a tractor trailer. If we're going 100 miles, it would make sense to build a transfer station. So what we did is we looked at what is the whole distance and then what those transfer costs would be or the direct cost. So this is some of the data we collected looking at the facilities. So facility name, what I like to point out is the whole distance, that's the one-way miles, and then the tipping fee information that we're collecting, either for solid waste, for mixed recyclables, or for yard debris. And you can see there's many facilities within the 75 miles, and the tipping fees range significantly. So let's drill down and look at just for garbage, just for solid waste. So these are the facilities that are the closest that would accept solid waste from the villages. So the first column is the hauling cost. The middle column is the tipping fee, what we would pay to get rid of the waste, and then our total cost. Currently using the Wildwood transfer station, that is a minor direct haul cost. And for the first several, I wound up using direct haul because it was less than 30 miles. For the ones that were greater than 30 miles, I said, okay, assume the village builds a transfer station, operates a transfer station, because that would be the most cost effective. What's interesting is once you get out about 50 miles, the cost to move the trash is greater than the cost to get rid of the trash. Okay, so you're spending more to ship garbage than you are to actually get rid of it. So there's an advantage to use the facilities that are close by. So the first 3, Wildwood, ACMS, it's also known as Heart of Florida, it's also known as Waste Connections, and then Lake County were the 3 that were closest and had the lowest total cost when you looked at that. Here's their locations. Villages is sort of in the middle central part of that map, basically to the east, to the right of the Wildwood transfer station. And then you have Heart of Florida and Lake County, they're about 13, 19 miles away, road miles. So we looked at what would happen if we used those facilities. If we continued with the Wildwood transfer station, now this is no change to the recycling. Okay, so assume recycling stays as it is, no education, no changes, no cost savings. We want to look at these separate, and we can build them together. So if we continue to use the Wildwood transfer station, like I said before, that would cost about $1 more per month. Solid waste to the landfill, recyclables to yard waste to the energy waste. If we went to the Waste Connections landfill, we would see an increase in the amount of, we'd see a significant increase in the monthly assessment, roughly $2 per month as opposed to $1 a month. And most of that is to get there. It's a 13-mile drive. Recycling rate would go talk to them a little bit more because they can recycle yard waste. So if they're recycling yard waste, that recycling rate would probably be close to 37%, maybe even a little bit higher. Or if we use the waste energy facility, that would be about $2 to $3 more. They've provided us a range of costs, from either $35 to $50 per ton. So we're looking at what the two differences would be. So that, but we also have a transportation cost to get there. The recycling rate would go up, but that is because this material would be now burned, and we're allowed to take credit for the combustion of the solid waste. Basically, you get half credit for burning waste. So there are the three major options that we're looking at right now. These numbers are preliminary, we're refining them. We need to look at both the collection cost and the transfer cost. But this is the three options, three facilities we're looking at, specific for all three of these would handle all three materials. There are some options out there that would only take yard waste or only take recyclables or only take solid waste. In general, all those other facilities are going to cost more because of the distance, the whole distance away. So these are the three options we're looking at. Option one is to continue what we're doing. Option two is to use a different landfill where our trucks would take the material directly to the landfill. And option three would be to use the waste energy facility, but our trucks would go to the waste energy facility. So they're the three options we're looking at. From a cost standpoint, you're looking at roughly $12 a year to about $36 per year increase per household. So I'd like to have another quick breakout session here. I know we're taking up a lot of your time today, but we do want to get your input. I'm here all day. I'll talk garbage all day with anybody. So if board has any questions, let's talk real quickly about what are your thoughts on the disposal program.
My vote would be for number 3. It's the cost of the Starbucks coffee, and it's bold and it's simple, and it can also be advertised through the villages as one of America's most eco-friendly places.
And this is assuming that everything else stays the same.
Everything stays the same.
So that these figures could be modified if there's some in-house changes to how we operate.
Yes, correct.
And has PET ever been considered? I call it pay as you throw.
Pay as you throw. No, the difficulty with pay as you throw is your per bag system. Because then you would have to be tracking how many bags you pick up each day. Generally, pay as you throw. Pay as you throw means you have different size trash cans. So you pay a different amount based on the amount of waste you put out. So if you have a little 20-gallon can, you may be paying $10 a month. If you've got that big 96-gallon 4-foot monster, you may be paying $50 a month. Or per bag.
But I think pay as you go, though, in a lot of communities is really good, but I think it really is keep it simple, actually keep it simple, and without the container size, which basically then you subscribe to, and nothing's left outside of it, it's very difficult with a tracking of the number of bags per household. And what I will tell you, in communities that do not have cans, having done this in a lot of communities for a lot of years, it is probably the most customer service complaint-fraught way to go if you're charging by bag and tracking.
Yeah, you can do it by bag, you have a tablet, the driver would have to register how many bags. Or you can do tags, the other way is to do tags and pre-purchase. But I've seen bags that there's full, and then there's full. And then quickly you can tell.
And then there's really full.
And then there's really full.
But is it safe to assume that irregardless of PET, with these particular option, effort to make an impact on the potential increase.
Like I said, this is not include changes in the recycling program either.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments, thoughts?
Does the board have any sort of questions or comments?
I would have a few. First of all, I'd like everyone to appreciate what staff, especially Richard Barrett and Kenny, have done in opening up this discussion. I mean, it's something that, gosh, it's so great that we can do it because we're a district Anscott board. My understanding is the people south of 44, okay, they have their trash pickup the same way as we do, except they have no recycling there. Absolutely none, zero. And they don't really have an opportunity at this particular point in time to change or have the discussions that we're having here. So I'm really appreciative of Richard and staff for allowing this to happen. I think this is great that we have this. And I certainly, personally, have picked up some points that I would like to bring up in our further discussions on this particular topic. I would like to see, I'm one that doesn't like to rush into things, that like to mull things over a little bit and get as much input as you can from not only residents and those. I'd like to see maybe another residents meeting like this down at CDD 10, since I'm representing that. Everything seems up way up north. I hardly ever get up this far north. But but then also our representatives are, and few of them are here, that are really interested in this. Our CDD supervisors have a meeting with them too, to cover these particular points. Because, we talk about education to the consumer, and that's important, but education to us and everywhere before we make decisions, I think would be extremely helpful I think, me personally, as being on this board, to have that additional feedback in addition. So those would be my comments. And I thank you all for attending here today.
I would like to thank all of you for coming today and encourage you to be ambassadors of our messages, to talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, tell them what's going on, tell them to look on the website or the paper or wherever they get information, because this is something that impacts every person in the villages. And the more we educate, the better the result will be. And thank you again for attending.
I'd also like to say that for me, education, everybody that came up here and talked about education. And I think we need to do that. And I also like to parrot what was just said about Richard and the staff. Take a look at all the information that we've got in the last 3 meetings. And then you understand the dedication that these people give us. And thank you for coming.
Comments?
The number of supervisors you got here, they're part of that process to disseminate information. And I talked to Cliff with regards to some of the special things that can be publicized in the POA newsletter, DHA newsletter, and this great opportunity for each of you as supervisors within your CDD, as Rick mentioned, to bring this into the meeting and try to emphasize what's going on and make sure that we're doing what's best for the country, for our kids, our future, whatever the case may be. Spending another dollar, it might be worth spending another dollar to improve our conditions of landfill. Eventually, we're going to run out of room. And the one item that was addressed there was contamination. And the process, some of the process before, and I think Richard's mentioned this, we have this magic window of distance for time and travel. rocking for me at one of our get-togethers that people think that a garbage truck, they just buy more garbage trucks. $250,000 to run another 30 or 40 miles, plus maintenance and everything else. So it's not a simple solution. The overall cost, you got to pay for it somehow.
Yes, sir?
So as we go forward, we hope that each of you have learned something today. Certainly every time we meet with the public, we learn something, whether it is technical or non-technical, related to this specific community's goals. As we move forward, and the next meeting will be again on November 4th at 9 a.m. at the Lake Sumter Landing Boardroom, and we'll also have reserved the overflow room as well. We actually want to make sure that you all are included. These goals may be very different, or they may be the same or somewhat the same as to what you experienced in your own communities where you moved from, where you spent the majority of your life. I do think it's very, very important. A couple things. I think it's important to realize that we have a very unique and different community here. Many of us purchased in the villages, myself included, because of the way of life, and to make sure that we are both financially, economically, and environmentally in a sustainable community. So what I would say is that we all need to approach this in a different way, realizing that there is a changing market. We have described to the individual boards, whether the number of districts, and I've made a presentation brief to each of them to make sure that they understood the proceedings of this separate board, NSCUD, and to make sure that there is a realization that we'll have to change our ways. What once was a very profuse market with an acceptability insofar as a global market for a need of these recyclables and an acceptance of them, almost as was discussed, in any manner possible, highly contaminated, uncontaminated, or anywhere in between. Now it's very different. And a lot of our consumer spending, a lot of our global market changes are undeniable insofar as putting us in this place to have to make these tough decisions. So what I would say is make sure that we're looking 20 and 30 years down the road. Many people have said to me, well, 10 years, that's about what my goal is because, well, I won't say the rest. So I think we need to look beyond that. I think we need to look at that 20 to 30 years. And what I have said as district manager is, and with my background and having a LEED A key designation from the USGBC, it's very important that we consider the environment. And when we talk about the environment, one thing we haven't talked about is the continuity insofar as the impact from cradle to grave, as they call it. And what I mean by that is that there is an impact even with the trucking on our environment, with the pollution and all of the if you will, products that go into the components that are impacted with that rolling stock. The petroleum need for the production of tires, and the pumping and use of gas insofar as the fuel, the oil. So it is a total sort of look. That's why early on I threw out just some consideration. If you do some reading on your own or go to different websites, you can actually see that many of what are considered to be the most fragile of communities, Honolulu, in Singapore, and also in various places in Europe, Paris I mentioned, take a look at what they are facing as highly urbanized areas with limited footprints, if you will, so far as their land mass. They're not as fortunate as we are in the United States to say, should we be trucking our waste to another community? And when you think holistically and broad-minded, you actually can say, is what I actually choose to purchase here, should I be putting that on another community, Cheshire Island, Georgia, for example, where our waste goes? Or should I be trucking it actually down to South Florida or even to a nearby landfill? Perhaps part of it should actually be, perhaps none of it should be, perhaps we need to look at some different options in long range. But we put that out to the board. We hope to see you at the next meeting, and thank you for your attention.